Hey Dom, hey
Hello.
Susie. So today we'll be talking about Scrooged, the 1988 film directed by Richard Donner, written by Mitch Glazer and Michael O'Donoghue. Interesting film. Um, I don't really know. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I don't really, I had a little bit of trouble getting through it, to be honest with you. Like, I remember watching this film before. I've never watched it to the end. And this is the first time watching it in its entirety. Yeah, I had a little bit of trouble just making it through. I think, and what do you guys think? Just kind of opening thoughts. Dom, do you want to get us
I was
started?
asking John about it
Yeah.
and my husband, and he was like, the questions he had, I realized like he was confusing it with Groundhog Day, and he said as much. And it was like, oh yeah, it is very similar, isn't it? I guess maybe Bill Murray's more angry as a
Hmm.
character a little bit, and but he's bringing kind of the same energy. I don't know which one came first. I'm so like
This
I'm
one came
realizing I'm
first.
mistaking everything from the
Hmm.
early 90s to be like the late 80s and vice versa, so I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I don't think you can have a conversation with Scrooge without Groundhog Day coming up,
Hmm.
probably. But I think it's really interesting because it's like, in a lot of ways, they are so similar, but in a lot of ways, they're so different in terms of like their level of success.
Hmm.
And I think all of us coming from like a writing standpoint, I don't think it's what one is written well and one is written poorly. Like I think you could make an argument that actually Scrooged has some elements of like really good writing in it. For me, it was more an example of tone being all over the place. Like if somebody were to ask me now, having just rewatched this movie, like what's an example of like where you can notice that the tone is off, I would be like, oh, watch Scrooged. Because to me, like I had watched this when I was much younger, probably a bunch of times. And
Hmm.
I think honestly, when I was younger, the fact that there was like a nostalgia factor that this is like the Christmas, the story we all know in a modern adaptation, and the slapstick of it all sort of got me through. Like the Carol Kane, like that was enough. But watching it now, I was just like, are they making two different movies here? Like it felt to me like Bill Murray is trying to make a movie that's different than Richard Donner. Like that felt very apparent to me without looking up if that was the case. And then afterwards, I looked it up and I saw that like reports of exactly that same thing because I was just like, Bill Murray's doing his thing, right? Bill Murray's being Bill Murray. He was hired to be Bill Murray, but it doesn't really fit with so much of the rest of the tone of the film that it's just kind of like, is this, uh, the thing that you're basing this on is sort of almost saccharine to the point of like, it's a tale of redemption for almost for children. I mean, it's for everybody, but it can be for children. But like, especially, you know, then there's jokes about nipples and there's jokes about like there's really dark stuff and then really saccharine stuff all mushed together, and then you look at the movies that Richard Donner made and you kind of get like he's like the Hollywood, right? He is the Hollywood version of pretty much everything, right? You got Superman, Lethal Weapon,
Hmm.
Goonies, like all that stuff that you associate with like Hollywood royalty is Richard Donner. And then Bill Murray is sort of like you get the sense that he's a more subversive character person and that everything he wants to be and he's interested in is sort of not that. I don't think he would have signed up to be in this like super Hollywood movie. And I feel like that shows with like from one scene to the next. That was like the main feeling that I had watching it.
Yeah, those are some really good points. Yeah, and I actually just looked up the Wikipedia today, this morning. Yeah, and it wasn't surprising that they had so many problems, and Bill Murray apparently had a lot of problems with the writers as well, and they just didn't really see eye to eye. There's a part where Murray says these guys don't understand comedy, and like I just guess they just didn't mesh, just didn't have the same sort of vision for the film. Yeah, any kind of opening thoughts, Susie? What did you think?
Yeah, what Dom was saying made me think of uh, the TV production that Bill Murray's character, Frank Cross, is trying to put on, and how a bit um, a little tonally weird is almost like it's like a meta commentary on the movie itself or something. I kind of like found that too, but then once I started thinking, oh, this is just like a very meta commentary on, you know what I mean? Like what we're watching them film is somehow supposed to be reflective of Scrooge the movie or something. And then I was like okay with it, but it was like, I was also thinking maybe some of these jokes just haven't aged well. I don't know. I didn't have a lot of laugh out loud moments. I feel like they were going for them. I like the fact that Bobcat Goldthwait was there, and love Carol Kane always. I mean, who's the cab driver? I mean, you know, so like, and then Mary Lou Retton, like what in the, so it's sort of it's kind of like it all made sense of a type, but just because it delivered on its promise doesn't mean I feel fulfilled or that I particularly enjoyed it. You know what I'm saying? Um, I I didn't hate it, but it was like, oh, okay, it's over. It's like this. Okay. That said, still cried at the end because it is about redemption. It's about like very personal redemption too. So it's sort of like I kind of bought that Bill Murray was very weepy at the end. I totally bought it. And it was like, oh, it didn't matter that I wasn't with him at every moment when his character was undergoing its change. It's okay that I wasn't like buying it because by the end he did. And that was okay for me.
Yeah, I think I had maybe a little bit of a different take on the ending. I actually really connected with the ending. I thought there was something so authentic about what Murray was saying, and it was really powerful. I was really surprised
Yeah.
at the ending. That being said, I felt like it had nothing to do with the movie. I felt like
Hmm.
I felt just watch the ending. You know, it had nothing to do. I just don't. I didn't feel like it was connected with the rest of the movie. I thought he was just going off by himself and just giving this really brilliant sort of performance at the ending. Um, yeah, I just
Yeah,
didn't. Yeah, what did you think
I
about that ending
no,
now? Because
I agree
it
with
was great. It was sort of such a powerful sort of performance.
I had the same feeling, but I think that's because it's true, right? Like it almost like explodes the whole film, and he gives this sort of monologue that's like either somewhat, it seems at least somewhat improvised and real, but because again, like the tone of that is almost like a network moment, right? Where there's just like
Hmm.
I'm the mad as hell moment. It's almost more, it's closer to that spectrum. And then like the Richard Donner version is like in the beginning when like his old boss gets, is this corpse and he gets shot and he drinks and the liquid carts coming out through the bullet holes. Like those are two different films, right? Like some of this film operates like a cartoon, honestly, and then some of it
Hmm.
operate like that ending is so it is very much on the real side of things. And so the like reconciling those two tones for me was kind of this. I was like, what am I didn't know what to feel. Like the Bobcat Goldthwait and the Carol Kane, those are like there's what two or three different times when he gets this alcohol and he's like literally like oh and so like a cartoon character like I can't wait to drink this and then either the cab driver steals it or it spills like and it's just like no one that's a heightened cartoony thing that is purposeful. No one would like make that acting choice thinking like this is real in any way. Like
No.
it's supposed to be, and that's like the sort of like late 80s of it all is at this point we have to like I always have to remind myself because of the whole 2000 thing, but like this film was made 35 years ago. So it's like it's almost like there was a different language to this that was acceptable, and like
Mhm.
things are just I don't know if it was like the 90s or but things just got like realer in a way. Like I don't know. I mean, obviously there were films that were much realer before this too, but like this is a very good example of like a quintessential Hollywood glamorized spectacle take on something. And it is what it is. Like it is what it wanted to be, except for the end and like the Bill Murray parts where Bill Murray clearly didn't want that to be it. Like
Mm,
it feels like it's at like struggling with itself. But like there's so much Goonies in this movie. And you're
mm,
like, and then
Yeah.
there's Network at the end. Right? Like I think Richard Donner made Lethal Weapon the year before this. And then there's again Network at the end. Like um it it's it was strange to me. And I think, like I said, because the slapstick part like didn't get me, like it did when I was a kid, there was a lot of moments where I was kind of just watching this being like, okay, like not really feeling anything.
mm. There were
I
some
would
funny
have
moments.
been,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
go ahead, Susie.
I loved it when like at the end Death like opens his cloak and you see those like crazy tormented souls, I guess, from last week. But they're in him, and I liked that as an idea. I don't know
Mm,
that it necessarily. Um, I found myself kind of wishing that it was like the world weary, lost in translation era of Bill Murray in the in Scrooged, because I'm like, well, why does Claire love him? You know what I mean? Like, I don't, it's like you only see them being happy briefly in a way that I didn't question the love between Ebenezer and his lady love in Christmas or Scrooge. I was like, what is she? Why? You know, why is she into him? And then like because he has no goodness that can see at all. I don't know.
Yeah,
Even
that's
younger, the younger version and the flashback, we're supposed to sort of like get that they had this like, great like meet cute thing and that's how the love happened. But then quickly thereafter, it's like he's a real dick. So I don't know.
yeah, that was the one other thing I wanted to mention. I didn't get a chance to be on the Scrooge episode, the 1951, but you both mentioned like the Scrooge character, like he is just a businessman, right? And so he takes that to the extreme. But like when you're watching that, you kind of accept, okay, this is who this character is, and it's not a person that
Mm.
we want to be like, but that's different than the Bill Murray version, right? The
Yeah.
Bill Murray version is like he goes out of his way to be an asshole in a way that's like you could just be running like you could be running a network and making decisions based on like oh you have to for the bottom line, but he's not that. He's interpersonally mean with people from the beginning in a way where like I just mean like the character in this is much meaner than the character of Scrooge is in the original.
Yeah.
And so you do have those questions then of like, well, is he redeemable? Why does anybody love him? Like, do I care? And like you get the flashback, like, yeah, his parents didn't treat him well, and you get the explanations for it, but it's almost like, is it too late or do I care? Like everything that Scrooge does in the original is sort of like, oh, he's kind of correctly pointing out that like he has to pay his staff for a free day and he doesn't want to do that, or like that people want free things and there are other like whereas this guy is like who revels in the fact that
Mm.
like his favorite thing is being mean to people. That's all we see him do. And those are two different things. He doesn't have any incentive to be mean to people other than he enjoys being mean to people. Whereas Ebenezer is not being mean, he's just being a businessman.
He's cold, not cruel. And Bill
Yeah.
Murray is, yeah, as you say, I love that word. He's reveling in it. That's sort of it's a character thing, not like a
Yeah.
just something that comes out of him because of his circumstances or something.
Yeah. Cold but not cruel is a perfect way to put it, I think. And it's like on the one hand, if you earned it, that's even better, right? If you can go from cruel to like
Mhm.
redemption, that's even more of an arc. But I don't feel like again because of all the stuff in the middle doesn't really seem as related as it should be to the redemption. It didn't feel as earned by the end for me. Like that big
Mm.
moment where they're all singing together. Like I just didn't. Maybe when I was a kid, I did feel it, but this time I'm watching it, I was kind of just like, I kind of know what I want this to be, and I feel like I could have that feeling, but I'm not really getting it.
I think if like maybe in some of the fantasies, not the fantasies, but the sequences, if it was turned around on and then put on him. So the people in his life being cruel to him, it might have done something for me. I don't know. But yeah, as is, it was just kind of did not work.
Yeah, I mean, we see his father being kind of cruel, giving him veal for
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys about that. I was very confused
I
about
think he was
those.
just a butcher. So
Yeah,
my
yeah,
yeah, because he has like blood all over him. So I feel like he just came back from
Yeah.
work from the butcher shop and he just drops veal on for like, which is for Christmas dinner or whatever, and he's like, "Here's your present."
Yeah.
Um,
okay. It was I
but
don't know. It didn't. It was just
it's
so
weird.
like yeah, it's just so absurd, you know. And
Yeah,
then
that's what I mean
entire
about the
movies like that,
cartoon.
it's so yeah,
Yeah,
there's such like an absurd sort of nature to it that I guess I had some trouble connecting with the characters. I didn't feel like they were real. Like they didn't feel, you know, like authentic characters to me. It felt they felt like it's a really good way to describe it, Dom, like cartoon characters almost. Um, I just thought that was just a missed opportunity. Um, but during even in that first flashback where they go back to Murray's home and Frank Ross's home and I don't know, it was just such a short scene and just the mother kind of blows him a kiss at the end and we don't really see his relationship with his brother as well. With
I think
that's
he's
his actual
pregnant with his
brother too,
brother.
right? That's John Murray
Yeah,
plays yeah, who plays his brother. That's his actual brother, which is interesting. Um, but yeah, I just didn't connect with it the way I think I connected with the 1951 version, right? Like just seeing
well,
him
so
yeah.
yeah, like in the episode on Scrooge too, Susie mentioned like crying, and like I cried watching the original Scrooge too, but I cried when they're doing the Ghost of Christmas Future and they go to the house and like Tiny Tim has died
Mhm.
and
Mm,
his father is like trying to put on a good face about the whole thing, like, and like even that, like those are obvious real stakes. So when you come from that, like it's obvious real stakes that the little boy doesn't speak, but relative to like dying, it's not the same. So it's like you have that in your mind when you're watching it, right? So like it is a big moment when the kid finally speaks. It's one of the best moments in the film, in my opinion, but
Yeah.
it's still not like a sick, crippled boy living. So it's almost like the Hollywoodization of it in that case, like doesn't even allow for the possibility that a boy could die. So they have to be like, well, what could we have it be? And so they that's like a pretty good solution, but it's still not as big as so like I didn't cry when the boy finally spoke. So it's just like the stakes are not really the same. Um, yeah.
mm.
Mhm.
What did you guys think about I know Susie touched on it, but Claire and Frank's sort of relationship and they seem to have like this on and off thing, you know. I don't know anything kind of did that relationship make sense to you, Dom? What do you think?
Well, for me, it felt very reminiscent of again something that was definitely more permissible in the 80s and still happens now, which is just like it's almost like the Romeo and Juliet aspect of it. It's like they're in love because they're in love. There's no explanation of it. It's just like they love each other. They'll always love each other. If you don't accept that sort of non-explanation as an explanation, I don't think there's enough text like in the film to explain why this like super good-natured person is still like in love with him, why she's still alone after 15 years,
Mhm.
why, I mean, you could say, I guess, because she's so wrapped up in her work, etc. But like, um, she pretty much drops everything immediately. Like he leaves her what probably sounds like a ranting, drunken phone call, and she shows up the next day. So for me, it's more like if the film gives an explanation, it's that actually she's been in love with him this whole time, and she's like immediately taking the first opportunity to rekindle. Um, and I don't think they're like I think they had good chemistry together when they did have scenes together. I don't think it's like oh the acting was flat or they didn't have good chemistry. It's just I also read somewhere when I was reading briefly that they shot a lot for this film and a lot was cut out. So like who knows? Maybe there's more
Mm,
of that. Maybe there's I do feel like there were like you could probably make two totally different films with the footage that was probably shot for this because it just, I feel like you could go through scene by scene and stick, okay, this is the A cartoon film, this is the B Lost in Translation network film, and you just like, and then fill it in with all the other stuff that was shot and be like, okay, these are two totally different films.
I think I thought a lot about what you said last week, Susie, about like who deserves what, and um like it just I was a little confused by their relationship. Um I didn't know why I didn't actually think that Frank was being a dick. Like when he do you know that scene where he's wearing the puppet thing? The
The
yeah,
dog.
the dog
Yeah, yeah.
costume.
Frisbee.
Yeah. And he was like, I want to go to this thing with my boss. This is a really huge opportunity. And then she was just like, no, we've been, I just didn't understand maybe her point of view. This is such a big opportunity, and he's been working his ass off. Like, this is,
Yeah.
this might be like a once in a lifetime sort of opportunity. And just her not understanding, I just didn't feel, again, like their relationship was an authentic one. I don't know. But how did you feel about their relationship in general, Susie? Like, I know
That
you touched on it, but
particular
yeah.
scene, I think that could have been fixed on the page. It just a little bit more nuanced because we're
How so?
seeing they're about to be breaking up. That's we all know that going like starting to watch the scene, and it's never like that clear cut where it's like, well, I've been working my butt off for this, and so I'm gonna go. And if you can't see it, then you're being really selfish and narrow-minded, or I forget how he puts it. And for to hear that come out of somebody is shocking, especially if like everything leading up to that, I assume they had a pretty good relationship that we didn't see up to there. So if it was just like maybe a half minute
Hmm.
more of just a bit more give and take that wasn't so black and white like that, I would have been like, I would have felt differently. I was like, yeah, Claire, go. You know what I mean? Like, why are you even sticking around? Um, but in the 1951 one, it's very emotional and kind of not clear cut, like who's in the right, who's in the wrong.
Hmm.
Um,
So,
I mean, and
did you
your
think
heart
that did
goes
you
out for
think that Claire
Scrooge.
was in the wrong? I mean, Claire was in the right and Marie was in the wrong in that scene.
Claire was in the right because if she was reacting to how he was talking to her,
Hmm.
then yeah. But
Okay.
I mean, if it was just a normal conversation, and let's say you and Isol were agreeing to had to assume that we were going to be having dinner, um, that we had made plans weeks before, and you suddenly say, "There's this. I'm excited about like this other dinner. Can you come with me?" And I'll be like, "Well, but I thought we were going to do this other thing." Because we have like a good rapport between us. We have a
Yeah.
perfectly fine relationship between us. So why would I kind of like, like they're all sort of like so ready to jump at each other, or
Yeah.
he is.
Mm.
And she, I don't know, it was all like a little bit kind of convenient and confusing. I know it was sort of like they're basically just mouthpieces. They have lines to utter and they're gonna do it to the best of their ability, but it's sort of I was just left like, okay, I'm just gonna let this go because this is not even the biggest question I have. So let's just go with it, and that's how my mind reconciled that.
Yeah, I agree. It just felt rushed to me. It felt like characters having to advance the plot, right? You need another checkbox in terms of something he did on a Christmas
Right.
that was for business as opposed to for the real reasons of Christmas. But like even within that scene, she is pretty much like jumps to like, okay, I think we should break up in kind of an abrupt way, essentially, because she's clearly been
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about this. But he doesn't even like he glosses right past that, and like ultimately he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to this dinner, and if it's early enough, I'll still come to. So like that's a different answer. Like he's kind of not accepting that that's happening even. But I think a big difference in terms of like the emotion is like in the original, the 1951 Scrooge, after they come to this decision and he leaves, Claire, like you watch her cry, right?
Yeah.
Like they take that moment to linger after the scene to show that like even though this was it seems like the right decision, it can still be a very painful and emotional decision, and that's a real thing. Whereas like in this one, because it's like gets cut. Like, we don't get any sense of how either of them feel about that. Like, wait, did they even just break up? Are they sad about breaking up? Is it just he's gonna go to this dinner, she's gonna go to hers, and then they're gonna go back to the, sleep in the same bed that night? Like, we don't know how they, like, any of those things, or how they feel about those possibilities even. It's literally like none of those character level things are the reason that scene is there. The scene is so that, like, like I said, that there could be another piece of evidence for, like, oh, this is like first draft stuff, right? Like, what's another example of something that he could have done on a past Christmas that would have been, Ghost of Christmas Past could show him, oh, he ditched out on a dinner that was planned for a month to do something to help progress his job. The same exact way, it's like, oh, he's in the mailroom for the first Christmas, and it's like trying, like, it's literally just like this is like if you ask Chat GBT, like, what are like 5 ways that someone could, prove that they're not acting in the spirit of Christmas? Like, they could probably come up with these things. Um, and so, like, that's what it felt to me like when I say like first draft stuff. It felt to me like nothing necessarily wrong with it, but that's the stuff that you kind of like work with to get deeper into like a better version of it. And also maybe there were better versions of it and it was cut for time, because it is still a relatively tight film in terms of length. And again, one of the things I read said that there was like a ton, like they shot this over 3 months. So this was not like and it was Richard Donner in his heyday. So they had, what was it, over $30 million. They were not rushed to make this movie.
Yeah.
And that's over $30 million in the 80s. So it's like, this is a relatively good budget, good length of time, Hollywood production. And so I feel like there may have been stuff that they did take the time to shoot that just like got edited out.
It
I mean,
felt
to Bill
long. It felt
Murray's
long to me.
credit, one of the things I think that relationship with Claire, even as sort of small it is, was even smaller at some point, because I read that he was one of the, like, one of the things he insisted on was like expanding that relationship. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just, for me, like the Groundhog Day of it all is sort of like Groundhog Day is an example where tonally, at least, the director and Bill Murray are trying to make the same film. And here it's like tonally, like, who's even the audience for this film? Was this a film for kids? No, because of some of the jokes in it. But there's a lot of stuff that kids, I don't know. I don't really understand like how to approach the movie.
Yeah. I just forgot. Oh, we actually did you meet Bill Murray, Dom, at in that NYU class? Were you in Antonio Manda's his Hollywood auteurs class? Because he came. He came to the class. We were screening Groundhog's Day, and he came, and it wasn't even a big class. It was like maybe 20 people in class, and he just came, just kind of sat with us and chatted for like 2 hours, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was not in that class, but
You were in
that
that
sounds
class. Okay.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I wanted to talk about, I guess, about Bobcat Goldthwait. Um, it was surprising to me at the end when he came in with the shotgun. I wasn't expecting that at all. He started shooting up the office. In the future, the future sequence. What did you think about him? And like, did you? I felt maybe like it was a missed opportunity there. Any kind of thoughts about?
Well, missed opportunity in what way?
I felt like he was an interesting character. In the beginning, where he gets fired and he gets, he turns to alcohol, and um, I don't know. I don't think we really get to explore his sort of character and maybe what he's going through. I mean, he's just kind of at the end, he's just kind of a bit of a punchline sort of joke. Um, I don't know. I just maybe thought there could be more there. Um, and I guess what you guys are saying, I'm reminded of I mean, you obviously remember our master classes, right, Susie, with the like with Dickerman and like breaking the story.
Love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm wondering how you guys would have um kind of changed this story, or like broke it to make it work. Like, what would you say, Susie? Like, if this was our Dickerman class, um, how do you think you would make this work?
I was tempted to just kind of take that TV spectacle, like the fact that they had the filming of that live on that day. It seemed to be like this was happening and then this is happening, and kind of like, yeah, let's just put them near each other and then that'll be the movie. It seemed to me. But like in the absence of that, I don't know what I would put in. It seemed like it was a bit of a distraction and used as comic relief, and and then it was confusing because then I'm like, well, everybody living it should be like, did you ever realize like Frank Cross is just like Scrooge? Like nobody said that, you know. Whereas like in like other ones of this type, in that world, the previous Scrooges kind of don't exist. And so you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's fine. Um, or I don't know. I'm not sure. Somebody else
Mm.
answer and maybe I'll kind of have some
Dom, so
ownership.
if
Yeah.
you like, if you if you had like free reign, you know, to like, so you're the, you know, you get to kind of decide what happens, you know, how do you think you would tell this story?
Oh, tough, man. I feel like because they've muddied up the narrative so much, it's hard to like on the fly. Because think about it, like in the original, or so let's start with this one. There's his boss, right? Like who's the head of the whole network, I guess. Um, there's no equivalent of
Robert
that in the
Mitchum, which
yeah,
like what in the heck, you know what I mean?
but there's no equivalent of that in the original Scrooge. He is the boss, right?
Yeah.
Then you split his employee into his secretary and Bobcat Goldthwait, right? So you've added like an extra split layer there. So like a lot of those choices make the narrative much muddier in a way that like it starts to sprawl because like now you have to do something with each of those characters. And also like the characters' actions aren't directly related to those things. So like if if he has to the end action that he takes is not a rebellion against his boss in a way that if that's the narrative it would play out, right? If he knows that he's going to get like there's kind of hints that like he knows he's going to get fired for doing this, but like the action of interrupting a live broadcast to go off the rails like is so much bigger than that and so much crazier. But also he doesn't seem it doesn't seem like he's doing it with the purpose of like leaving this job to pursue more noble acts, which is like the original Scrooge when he's like giddy and laughing, he's like transformed and elated and this person like bouncy, beautiful person now, right? And even when Bill Murray's trying to get across that at the end, he still has like this sadness. Um, it's not like a triumphant music swell rebel against the man who owns the network, who's the one who made us do all this, because he's the one who made him do all this. So like they separated out the the sort of antagonist into half Bill Murray and half Bill Murray's boss, if that makes sense. Whereas in the original Scrooge, who would you even say the antagonist is? It's like it's just his own actions, really, right? And so it's kind of I don't know how I kind of want to say that I feel like some sort of like blowing up in the third act like they actually arrived at could work, but I don't think the way they did it worked. Instead, it felt more like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where they just kind of abort the third act. They're like, we don't have enough money to make this, so we're just gonna like make up something, and that's the end of the movie. Like, I would almost be interested in finding the original script and seeing what is supposed to happen there. I don't know. What would you do?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I was just hoping you guys had a good answer.
Well,
I'm
it's
not
hard. It's
sure.
hard because I think it falls apart in the third act, right? And I always think like if there's a problem with the third act, really that means there's a problem with the first act. And the problem with the first act to me is that he's a one note, over the top, cartoony, evil person, which like again, especially in today's cinema, like that's not how we operate anymore, right? We have well-rounded characters who do things that might be evil, but for reasons that we understand. And that's not Bill Murray. We don't understand why he acts like that. Like, and then when you go to Christmas Past, like it's not enough to be like, oh, okay, I get it. His parents were dicks. That's why he's like sadistic towards his secretary. Like it's not one to one. And then also like, yeah, again, his boss, adding his boss character into it changes the whole dynamic because now there is a sort of man to rail against, whereas that doesn't exist in the original Scrooge story.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you're totally right. And you know, I guess last week I remember Susie, we were talking about like this investigation of the past and of seeing sort of past trauma and whatnot. And I guess that's what I mean about missed opportunity with even with like Goldthwait. Like I just wanted to see like where he's from and like what he's going through. And yeah, I
That's
just
so
thought that would
true.
be
We never
interesting. Yeah.
see his trauma.
No, yeah. And why
I
he
think
maybe
the
is the way
trauma
he
is
is.
supposed to be when he's little, but wasn't that bad? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's so
that he could.
true.
I mean that part where he does come in with a shotgun, it was surprising. But like I again, I did want to see like what how he like where that came from and like I
I
don't
think it's
know.
literally Elmer Fudd. Like it's, I mean, it doesn't feel like there is something there that we're not getting. It seems like they're just operating at the level of
Mhm.
cartoon. Like I don't get the sense that there is a whole bunch more there that we're missing. It's just like that's all there is.
Mm,
He's this like they can't even think of three different actions for him to do. And so they're like, let's think of one action and repeat it three times because that will be the cadence of the joke and it'll be funny. It's like, okay, so now he literally says like, "Oh, I lost my job. My wife divorced me." It's just like
yeah.
these throwaway lines.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wanted to
Um,
see like where was that? Like you know, I wanted to see more there. Yeah.
I don't know. I there's something about me that likes the potential punk rock version of this, right? And the punk rock version of this could include a guy busting in with a shotgun to take over a control room and a guy taking over live airwaves to deliver a message, like in this similar to a network feel, you know? But like, you know, Patty Chayefsky writing a beautiful, one of the best monologues in the history of cinema is not the same as Bill Murray ad-libbing a still pretty effective ending. It's
Yeah.
not the same. It felt a little bit to me like a television preacher at some point. And so you're like you're kind of all over the place, dude. Like I don't know where you're trying to take me. I don't know where we're going. Like I kind of want to be like, yeah, this is this awesome punk rock moment you're rebelling against, but it didn't feel like that. But I think if I had to, I would rework things to work toward that. So that at the end it is this punk rock moment where he takes over everything and he knows he's being fired, he quits or whatever. Like that's kind of the purpose of it. And B, it's like the recognition that I have this moment where millions of people around the world are listening to me and I'm trying to shake them into the realization that like first of all Christmas is a time where we can all do it and also it doesn't have to only be Christmas and you can be good people like but it has to be more pointed and it has to be like purposeful and everything has to have pointed him bringing him to that exact moment
And earned.
and like yeah, and earned. And like maybe that act is what makes Claire love him. And then I get it, right? But Claire is already like on her way over to the studio before he does that.
Yeah.
So it's
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
it's all over the place. But like that, and again, when we come, especially when we come up with things on the fly during the podcast, it's like usually it's a overly simplistic version. And you're kind of like, I don't know if that would be great anyway. But like that's at least my first instinct was to say like narratively that would be a satisfying like let's do a punk rock Christmas is not about ratings and getting more money and getting more people to view. Like you're talking about telling people to stop watching television when your job is to get people to watch television on Christmas Eve, right? Like there are some um, elements of that that could be sort of subversive and cool, but that's like I think maybe one third of the way there in what we see for me.
Does it seem like it sort of wanted to be Alfre Woodard as the love interest, but like they didn't want to go there or something, as opposed to like separating it into assistant and love interest or something? That might have like streamlined a little bit. Also, like just to have Robert Mitchum just die up top. and make him the ghost of, he just reappears to Bill Murray the next day. He's like, don't be like me. You watched me die. You're now in my office, but don't be like me, or something. I don't know. I mean, I know that like because it's Robert Mitchum, you're not going to do that, but then don't hire him. I don't know. I'm getting like now attempting to wear a producer hat that I do not want to wear. I don't know.
Yeah.
Love Alfre Woodard though. She's always so good.
Yeah. It does bring me back to the first shot, Um, do you guys
Yeah.
remember do you guys remember what happens?
I do because now like you asked.
Uh,
So it is the title coming through the clouds, isn't it? Or like the POV shot, like
yeah.
as opposed to I'm gonna tell you a story. It's like this is some kind of celestially real and important thing. This is
hmm
brought by God or something.
hmm Yeah. And then we get to like the machine gun Santa, right? And then
Mhm.
things kind of go crazy.
I'm into that movie. Lee Majors, that seems fun, and like cartoon for cartoons as
Yeah.
opposed to cartoons with like a shoehorned message that you're like desperately trying to get in there.
mm mm.
That's kind of what I meant about like I think there are lots of moments where the writing is really strong too, because like those felt like really like the fake the when they're sending up these programs like though that was funny, right? It was like within a scene they definitely knew how to write funny scenes. For me, it was more like the structure part of the writing that was like all over the place. But like within scenes, there's some strong writing there. And there's some strong acting. Like there are some elements. Like it's not a terrible movie across the board, but it's not better than the sum of its parts for me, is more like where the issues come from.
I did want to go over like one of our comments here because I thought it was interesting and it ties in with everything too. So one of our commenters, his name is Lloyd, and he says that outrageous what they did to Marley, works hard, minds his own business. This is what he gets. Shameful, shameful. I know it's fiction, but I wish I could hire the Ghostbusters to zap those damn Christmas ghosts, not Marley. It reminds me of what you said last week, Susie. Like, does Marley deserve, um, it is a story about redemption and why doesn't Marley get a second chance? Like he's chained and shackled for all of eternity. Like, where's his redemption, right? Um, does make me think about that. Do you have any thoughts about that comment, Susie?
Um, Actually, it's a good point. I didn't
Yeah,
even like
I,
think
I
of
wasn't
it in
thinking about
those
that either.
terms.
Yeah,
I also, it's interesting that I also assumed that it was not merely a dream and that these ghosts did appear. He
right.
did go back in time, look at himself at school, and the same with the Bill Murray character. That it wasn't, kind of just a dream and that whole thing. Um, yeah, that's freaking unfair.
Yeah,
um,
It's a good point. I mean, I honestly I think it could be as simple as the fact that Marley died first, right? Because if if this
mm,
the mythology is like if essentially it's not like they're hell, it's more like they're spirits doomed to be walking the earth essentially. And so he's there and able to warn Scrooge, right? But maybe like it seems like they only really had each other. Like maybe if Scrooge had died first and he realized that fate, he would do the same thing for Marley.
mm.
But Marley dies first, and he's like, "Oh shit! Like I gotta warn Scrooge because we don't really get a sense that there's any other people in their lives that would care enough to even tell them, like, hey, you have a chance to not suffer my fate." Essentially, it doesn't seem like either of them would have been the type of people to believe in that type of thing in life, right? And in fact, it takes him some time to sort of like even believe it when it's in front of his eyes. So I feel like it Marley does get kind of screwed, but like it's more when you have one person in your life, you roll the dice. That's like if you have more people in your life, you have more people to warn you, maybe. I don't know. But for me, I did feel like if the story was if Scrooge died first, he would have warned Marley of the same thing. Because once you're suffering that fate and you actually did care about someone in life, you wouldn't want them to suffer the same fate. But you have to have somebody to warn you.
That's so interesting. Wiley does get a lot. It's just short shrift on this. Yeah, I mean, he's a very caring man. He worked
Well,
hard, cared about his best friend Scrooge, and came back from the dead to warn him. You're gonna learn this lesson. That's how much I love you, guy. You're doing it.
yeah.
I love that as a movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what I was thinking. We should write it. Um, yeah. A really good point. I don't know. That was I was surprised.
Yeah.
It was a very good point. Um, Another commenter says, Christmas Carol, brilliant film. Let me share it with you guys. And she's going to be watching it um, closer to Christmas. That's what she says. Thinking of watching it this evening, as I do every year, run out of time. But I hope to do so as soon as possible before Christmas. What are you guys going to be watching this Christmas? Are you going to be rewatching Scrooged? Would you guys ever return to this movie?
It's on so often. Sometimes it's just on in the background. But
Yeah,
I want to watch Scrooge again
yeah.
because John hasn't seen it like I guess since well a long time.
Mm,
And it is really quite good. It's emotional. It does everything a Christmas movie needs to do.
yeah. Dom, I wanted to ask you, I asked Susie last week, what was your favorite Scrooge growing up? Did you have like a go-to sort of Scrooge? Because there's so many of them, you know?
I think I have a similar
Really?
response where it's more like it's so in the ether and there's so many because it's not just like the movie versions, right? Like every television show, they do
Mm,
like their version of a
Yeah.
Christmas Carol within it, and it's just like it all gets mixed together in so many different ways. And like in some of them, the Claire storyline is completely omitted. And I actually like realized that because I remembered it a lot less than the other pieces of the storyline when I watched the original 1951 version.
mm,
So I don't think it's almost more like this thing that exists in pop culture that everyone is aware of before they've even seen a version, or at least that's how it feels to me. Like you hear a Christmas Carol and Scrooge alluded to before you've ever seen them. So I definitely don't. I don't think I saw this specific version when I was very young. Um, so yeah, I don't have like a specific. Oh, this is the definitive version of Scrooge at all.
I
I
have a
mean, I think the version
question.
we watched is the definitive version, but I don't think I had one that I was like big.
mm.
I have a question about why is the Scrooge character so enduring? Why do we all respond to Scrooge in largely similar ways? Maybe
Mm.
desire for redemption. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's like I think it's the same reason we kind of respond to like the masses respond to like self-help books. Um, yeah, it is. Yeah, I think you're right. It's sort of this. I think we all feel like we can be better, and um, yeah, I think that occurs to me every at the end of every year. I want to I want to make changes, and I want to do. You know, we have our resolutions that we never keep, and yeah, I think that's why I think we all want to strive to be better people. Yeah, like you said last week, I think it's like this aspiration. But yeah, again, I don't know if that's again, usually our New Year's resolutions they kind of go unresolved. So I don't know. What do you think, Tom?
But yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing, but I think it's super satisfying to have
Yeah,
an example of the positive result in front of you.
yeah.
Like I feel that way with creativity, right? Like creativity breeds creativity. So you go to a play and all of a sudden you're like, I want to write a play, you know? And it's kind of the same thing with like people who have New Year's resolutions about their body, some of them will like tape up like a picture of the body that they want. I don't necessarily think that's the right thing, but in this case, it's like we all want that resolution of that moment of clarity of like, I can be a good person and the world can be a good place, and we should um appreciate the things in our lives that we have, right? And so then to see an example, like that's the power of it, to see an example of someone who's living that moment of clarity, and to be able to believe that he will every day into the future, even though that's not necessarily humanly possible. But like he is sort of like sealed into that moment of like giddy wonder and belief that he now has his priorities straight, and everything that is good in the world should be appreciated, and he can help make that happen. And like that's kind of the place Bill Murray gets to at the end, right? I think that's, if we react to any part of that speech, it's us believing that he gets to that place too in that moment. It's not, it doesn't quite have the same weight, I think, especially because we see him being such an evil person that it's that much harder to believe that he could, flip over 180 that easily, and that it could last forever. But like it's this almost aspirational thing to have this moment to see like, hey, here's a guy who's living in the world who didn't have his priorities straight, and now like through the power of these ghosts and the spirit of Christmas, he believes uh that like he knows what to do to make things right and to make the world a better place, and he's going to be fulfilled by that. And it's just like the idea of charity, right? The idea of like charity is the same as love essentially. And so it's like this man has figured out how to love in a way that he didn't before. And like that's what we all want, right? We all want to be able to give ourselves more, and bring beauty into the world, and not take things for granted. Like to see an example of somebody doing that where he's laughing so much that it feels like he's going to like float right off the earth. Like that's what I want to do, right? So how could I not love that and enjoy that and want to see that every year?
I did want to talk about your slam dance stuff because it's a big deal and it's
Yeah, very
important.
big deal.
So yeah, it is a big
Jesus.
deal. Yeah. So what's up, Susie? Are you excited?
I know, Slam Dance, it just came out of nowhere. We really thought our festival run was pretty much over with DTLA in November, and got this news. And now it's kind of been like a scramble to get all the stuff done. I think it's like, thanks. It's a bigger scale, and so it just already feels bigger. And
Yeah.
there's more stuff to do, period.
Hmm.
Um,
Are you kind of
and
thinking about like promotional stuff, or how are you guys looking to handle this stuff? T-shirts, cups,
yeah, we
connections.
were, it was suggested that we think about getting a PR company, public relations
Mhm.
in place. We had thought about it even since the beginning, and the general consensus seemed to be not sure for this festival, for this movie, that it's even necessary, to be honest. And so that's kind of the idea we had carrying through the other three. Um, and then Slam Dance happened, and suddenly we were getting contacted by people, and so it was like, wait, okay. And then it became, but just much more peopled in general, like as preparations have been like going on, so it already feels bigger. Never been, so don't even know what to expect. Eric has been, but it was a long time ago, so he doesn't remember. And he was there, I think, as a DP, so it felt different maybe to him back then too. I
But
think the aspiration is like for distribution. Um, but to answer your question about like publicity, or what did you call, like materials and things like that, I think we have some very vague notions, but want to get the feedback, I think, from any PR company that has more experience with like proven results and that type of thing, which will take time. So I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like it's already feeling like mid-December. By the time Christmas ends, we'll like I don't know. It just feels very short, not enough time-ish.
Yeah. But by the way, this film is by Susie Moon and Eric LaPlante. It's called Darla in Space. Awesome film. And I guess I have some credibility now because I was telling all of you watchers out there, your viewers out there, yeah, to go to the film, right? So it's screened at
Yeah.
downtown LA Film Festival in Bushwick, where it
Yeah.
won awards. You guys got Best Narrative Feature, right, at Bushwick, and then Best Ensemble at Bushwick,
Yeah.
at LA, in LA, downtown LA.
Yeah.
So exciting. Now you guys are going to Slam Dance. Again, the film is Darla in Space. Um, so dates, you guys don't have the dates just yet, but I'm sure
Not yet.
they'll be,
The
yeah.
festival itself is 19th through the 25th. So we get a couple screening dates, I think, during that week.
Very cool. Very cool. Congratulations again, Susie. That's,
Super excited.
yeah, a
Yeah.
really big deal. And Slam Dance is such a great festival, and they've always supported independent filmmakers, and yeah,
It
that's so
seems to
cool.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really huge. Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's
Thanks.
I hope that it gets distribution. I hope that, whatever, I'm sure you have all other scripts laying around
Yeah.
too. I'm hoping it
Yes.
somebody asks you, what do you want to do next? I'm hoping for all of these things. So
Yeah.
congratulations and enjoy it, because it's like we all do this, and it's like
Yeah.
the actual festival experience sometimes is one of the better parts of it. So enjoy
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it's hard to like even kind of remember, even from Boston to Bushwick in detail. It's like it all just like goes by so fast. Sitting in the theater, all I do is like listen for reactions, and I'm not watching it at all, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you guys sit in the back?
I want to, I prefer it, but sometimes it doesn't happen that
Yeah.
way.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that discussion. If you found it interesting, informative, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing. It'll really help us out. We have some really cool discussions lined up for you, so I hope you're looking forward to them, and I'll see you next time.